Hi, my name is Julie Smith-Centeno. I am the founder and CEO of the Potocki-Lupski Syndrome Outreach Foundation. Potocki-Lupski Syndrome, also known as PTLS, is a rare chromosome disorder. And 33 years ago, 1987, I gave birth to a beautiful little boy. Pregnancy was going just fine. But then when it came to labor, he didn't want to come out. So he started with showing fetal distress, and I ended up having a C-section with him. And I remember when he came out in the world that the doctor was concerned because he thought he wasn't crying or breathing, actually, because he wasn't crying. And I remember I didn't hear any cry. And the nurses took him and stroked his feet and rubbed him and got him to cry a little bit. And then he stopped crying again. When he was placed in my arms, he was alert, he was observant, and we have pictures of him being very observant. But that was the start of my journey. The journey to PTLS. I didn't know what he had. I just thought he was a quiet baby. He didn't cry as much as I thought babies were supposed to. He would smack his lips when he was hungry. And he didn't meet all of the developmental levels that he was supposed to. And here I am, a nurse working for pediatricians. I see babies all day long. I see little kids. And now it's my child who there was just something not right. So it took several years of tests and seeking out what could it be. The pediatrician and myself worked together looking through books and trying to get different tests done until finally the last straw was genetic testing. So the genetic test was done, and in those days it was the FISH genetic test. And an amazing doctor, Dr. Robert Stratton, the geneticist, he's the one who found it, and he sat down and told me that this was very rare, that it may not have been picked up if it was some other genetic office that really wasn't looking, but he had experience in looking for the deletion of what our children have, the duplication of. And he wandered on over to chromosome 17 and checked it out. And again, those days, the genetic testing didn't always pick it up, but his was picked up. So he told me that there isn't much information out there right now. There wasn't anyone doing any research on it right now, but to wait. So I waited. Well, during that time of waiting, I didn't have any answers. All I knew was I had a child who was delayed in eating and speaking and walking. He didn't walk till he was almost 3. He didn't speak till he was almost 6. He made noises, but he didn't really come out with words. He was born with a submucous cleft palate, so the roof of his mouth didn't close properly. Had surgery on that. He was born with, he had strabismus, so lazy eye of both eyes, so he had surgery on that. And then school came along, and I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. So in my mind, it was do everything. Assume he's going to learn. So I lived off of assumption. Assume he was going to learn. Assume he was going to be able to walk, and that eventually he would talk. And there was no other choice because we didn't know what it was. So we assumed the best, and that was the best thing I could have ever done. So Christian started school when he was 3 in the early childhood intervention program under the classification of other health impaired. And that opened the doors for him in learning because they couldn't label him. They had to give him everything that he needed. He had speech therapy to help with his mouth, after the surgery, getting his tongue moving and helping to get the air to come out his mouth as it should. So that helped as well, but we were still at a loss. I checked back with the geneticist every 6 months, waiting for some answer. 6 years later, I finally got an answer. And I was told there was a doctor named Dr. Lupski who was studying the deletion and wanted to see Christian to do a comparison. At that time, Dr. Potocki was off having children, and so I didn't get to meet her at that time, but Dr. Lupski sat me down and we talked, and he said, we don't know a lot. I can't tell you, you are it. I said, so there's no conference, no family get-togethers, no nothing? Nothing. He said, you're it. So other than that, there were 2 other children in the world that had this syndrome. There was a 3rd one, wasn't sure if it was just the syndrome. It seemed to be there was more than just the one, more than just PTLS that this child had. So he said, you're going to have to wait, but we're going to do some studying here. So we did. We did a week long in the hospital of every test that could be done to help with the protocol put into place so that we could learn more about this genetic duplication, this PTLS. It didn't have a name until 2007. So it was just known as DUP17P11.2. That was it. So we went with it. And again, assuming the best, not sure what limits there were. So in my mind, there weren't any limits because no one told me any different. And even if they did, I'd have to say, sorry, not my child. My child is going to do as much as I can get them to do. And I don't want any limits placed on him. And that was a fight. When it came to further on in school, it was still a struggle of trying to get the teachers to see that, yes, he may not be speaking very well, but his mind is very, very sharp in so many ways. Other areas just didn't make sense to him. So it was a learning process. Little by little, more families came along and learned a little bit more. We learned a little more from our PTLS mouse. And here we are now, 33 years later, and now we've got so many families around the world that, again, have shared their stories with me, and I've been able to put the big picture together by taking all the puzzle pieces, what seems to be common, what doesn't seem to be so common, and how do we live our lives each day in our homes with our children, in our community with our children. What do we do? What do we expect? How can we help them so that we see the abilities they have and help them reach their potential in life? Christian now is an avid reader. He speaks very well. He still has a little problem with the submucous cleft palate, even though it was repaired. There's a weakness there, so there's a little nasal emission that he has to really work on. But he has a mind for geography that is just so remarkable. And he amazes me every day. He writes a newsletter. He's been writing now for 14, almost 15 years, a weekly newsletter, a blog. And it started off just writing about geography and travels. And it's then moved into just writing about life, daily life for him and how he sees it. And so it's been able to help me learn more about him, how his remarkable mind works, and then help to share that with other families that are in our PTLS community so that they can then help their child reach their greatest potential. So this has been quite a journey. We're learning about Christian and then learning about all the children around the world and what makes them so similar, what are their differences, and their uniqueness that they bring to the communities that they live in and to the world. We're going to continue to learn more, but as I learn and what I have learned and put together, I will continue to help put out there for educating communities and the therapists and the teachers and the doctors that are working with the children. So hang in there. You have got what it takes, more than enough. Breathe and believe in your child's potential.